Hello, my name is Ian Jones. I'm making this video as part of my application to the University of Wyoming's brand program. They asked us to answer a series of several questions, which I'm going to start off with the first one, which asks us to describe an ethical dilemma that we were involved in, involving with some peer behavior, and how do we handle that situation. The situation that I'm bringing up is several years ago, I got the opportunity to hire one of my old mentors as a paramedic with the company that I currently work with as an educator. He met the qualifications, went through the interview process. He was the most qualified candidate. We were able to bring him on board with our company. And for the first year or so, he did an amazing job, helped us make a lot of good changes, make us some good progress with our education. But unfortunately, we had an incident where he was on a training station one day during a simulation lab. And then he just up and left. He ended up leaving, going home because he had a problem with a part-time job that he was also working with. Didn't communicate with anybody on this issue or why he needed to leave or anything else. Just up and left. Um, uh, with him being a mentor and violating our policy like that, it was a big ethical dilemma for me of how do I handle a situation like this, especially somebody that I had worked with for so long. Talked with my leadership in my HR department. We grabbed a policy out. We had looked at some previous history of other folks doing this, and unfortunately, we had to follow our policy, and we ended up having to separate with that employee. Unfortunately, it was not easy, not an easy thing to do, but looking at our policies, how we handle situations in the past, it was just something that we were not willing to negotiate on. That was absolutely unacceptable. So that was a pretty tough dilemma for me to kind of go through. The next one was talking about where we had to collaborate and work with as part of a healthcare team. Um, Several years ago, a little over a decade ago, I worked here locally in Cheyenne, Wyoming, as a part of the ambulance service. I was able to start one of the state's first ground critical care transport programs as part of our local ambulance service. This was a lot of work to get everything put together. We had several of us that went through some critical care training. We were able to purchase some equipment through our company to enhance our capabilities on the ambulance. Then we had to coordinate with the hospitals, some local hospitals around the Cheyenne area, and then with the transport coordinators, with our local leadership, my medical directors, nurses in the ER, ICU, things like that, to make sure that we're all coordinating and collaborating and making sure that everybody knew that this new asset was available, and not just available, was this asset available and able to meet the needs that the community was actually that we were seeing at that time. So it was a lot of meetings with the hospital, multiple different agencies in the hospital, even within our own company, because there was billing aspects that we had to kind of go through when it came to purchasing the equipment, making sure that we were validating and still structuring our training appropriately to make sure that that was appropriate as well, and we could validate everything we were doing on that critical care side. So there was a lot of coordination, a lot of meetings when it came to making sure that everybody was on the same page and making sure that we're doing everything the correct way as well. Um, an area where I received some very unexpected feedback. It was a training issue with one of my old ambulance services. Um, Somebody turned in some training documents to the state EMS office that my leadership thought looked a little questionable. My name was part of the signatures. It was that old signature book that we had to use back in the day. There were some questions about, was this my signature? Was this other people's signatures? Were somebody forging signatures? There was a lot of questions around some potential issues with that person's training record. So what they ended up doing was everybody that they could verify was part of this training record, they basically put them on an administrative leave that was inside of our company. So me and a couple other folks were put on administrative leave while they're doing their investigation. I kept on thinking back to some of the training that I had done with this person, and how we had done it, and we had followed local policy, kind of what we do normally, train them like we do our normal clinicians, and basically I racked my brain for a little over a week, making sure that did I follow the right policy, making sure that I was reading the policies correctly, making sure I was understanding the policies, and then trying to figure out what's a way that I can make sure that I wasn't put in a situation like this again, to make sure that I didn't put my job and my career and my license in jeopardy. So it was a pretty tough week that week, just not knowing kind of what was going on during an investigation. They really don't tell you a whole lot. So until the final end. So I did my final investigation communication with them. And some of the feedback we got from the state um, hey, we understand your policy, but this is the state rules and regs. How do you perceive these? And we had a great discussion about how the rules and regs were written in regulation versus how most people interpret it versus what is the standard practice. And I think what we were able to do is establish statewide that there was some issues with how the rules were being read and understood and what most agencies were doing. So what we were able to do with some of that information is the state was actually able to change some of their regulations and how they tracked, and was able to make sure that we were doing the right thing on both aspects of our side, doing the education, signing off on these licenses, and the state side of making sure that their policies were in order and the rules and regs were in order as well and being fully understood across the entire state. But that was some unexpected feedback of making sure that I knew that we were following the policies correctly. Um, we got some good information on making sure that we were communicating exactly what was going on and following some of those policies with the rules and regs. So it was a very unexpected issue that we had to deal with, but we had a lot of really great back and forth with the state EMS office at the time, receiving some feedback of, quite frankly, how good our training was compared to some of the other folks, and just how some of the stuff was being miscommunicated when it came to how it was being delivered. An area where I had to display empathy was as a regional educator. I was in charge of a multi-state region, about 300 clinicians that were in the critical care field. And we had a clinician come on board, very, very book smart. She was very motivated, has been trying to get on with air medical for quite some time. Got on with the company with junior hire orientation. She did an okay job, but then we had problems with her when she came onto the aircraft. She came out of the aircraft, there was a lot of issues with crew resource management, being able to work as part of a team, being able to work in that EMS environment, because they mainly spent their entire career working in an ICU. So coming into an EMS environment, it was a little bit of a break from their normality of how they actually did something. Um, what we did with this young lady is we worked with her and we built education plans and we got her a mentor and a preceptor and a guide to help her trying to develop where she was. Um, Unfortunately, at the very end, we had great communication back and forth. She was not able to make that change. And unfortunately, it was one of those things where we had to have that really tough conversation of, hey, you did a great job. Thank you so much for doing all this. We really understand the work and effort you put in. You're just still not meeting the standard. Unfortunately, this is one of those ones where they did a great job. They did everything they could have done, but unfortunately, they just weren't up to that level yet of what we needed to see when it came to operating in the critical care environment in the EMS realm. So unfortunately, we had to kind of separate ways there a little bit and say, hey, this is thank you. I appreciate everything you've done. The door is still open for her to come back at some point in time when she gains a bit more experience and learns that crew resource management aspect of things. Finally, some big challenges that I think I'm going to have in nursing school is I have a little over 20 years in EMS, 10 years as a paramedic, and or sorry, 15 years as a paramedic, and about 10 in the critical care realm. Part of it is going to be breaking some of those critical care paramedic concepts and thought processes that I have embedded ingrained, and realizing and understanding that nursing is a different beast. I've learned already in the last couple of years of teaching nurses in the critical care realm that they learn, they operate differently, and their level of expectations is different than paramedics. So this is one of those things where I'm going to have to kind of humble myself a little bit. I have a knowledge and experience, but I have to bring that back and kind of come back as a brand new clinician and understand that I need to kind of start from the bottom and really understand there's a lot of differences between paramedics and nurses, despite some of our similarities. So thank you very much for your consideration. Hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.